We now come to the third section of this class, and that is to introduce to you multivariate statistics. Multivariate statistics builds on the concepts that we've already discussed in descriptive and inferential statistics, and you will see that this takes you into some higher levels of analysis, which brings some power and some insights to your possible studies that can be very helpful. Now let's look at the background as we consider these ideas. First of all, remember that there are two types of data that we want to consider. Categorical data, which is nominal data, and that is data that has a name to it. And then quantitative data, which is in SPSS, is known as scale data, which also you'll see in publications as interval or ratio data. Another thing to consider are the number of variables, independent and dependent. Up until this time, we've had one independent variable, one dependent variable. Now, in the independent variable, there may have been more than two groups, but they were all still looking at the same variable among those groups. And then we have to understand what is the nature of the research question that you're asking, because that will dictate the methodology that you need to use. Now, in your research question, are you looking for the degree of relationship between variables? Now, there are three types of statistics that you can use. You can use bivariate correlation, which is what we've been doing with the Pearson product correlation. Then you can do multiple regression, and notice that here you have two IVs and one DV. And then in path analysis, you can have two IVs and one or more DVs. The IV is always concerned with the relationship or prediction of the DV. The independent variable is always concerned with its relationship to the dependent variable or how it can be used to predict the dependent variable. Another question is, are you looking to see if there's a significance in the difference of group means, with the purpose of showing a causal relationship? Now, up until this time, when we've used t-test, where we had an independent variable with two categories, a dependent variable, and then we had the one-way analysis of variance, where we had the independent variable, the dependent variable, the one-way multivariate analysis of variance is what's going to be new. In these first two, we were still making inferences about causality. Once we begin to move into the multivariate analysis, now we're making more of a strength in our case for causality. And notice that we have more than two categories and we have more than two dependent variables that are quantitative. We also add to the MANOVA the MANCOVA, and that is where we can statistically control for one of the covariates. And so you can pull out of the situation a variate that may be impacting what's happening, and so you can pull that out. And so you may say, all right, let's pull gender out of the equation. And if we take gender out of the equation, what's causing what's going on here? Then we have factorial multivariate analysis of variance, and that's where we have two or more independent variables that are categorical. And that again is nominal data. And we have two or more dependent variables that are quantitative or scale data. Then we add to that the factorial multivariate analysis of covariance, where again it's the same thing as multiple analysis of variance, but now we add in the covariant to take it out of the equation to see what is occurring. And then we have the idea of prediction of group membership. And this we have two statistical manipulations that we'll be looking at. Discriminant analysis, where we have more than two independent variables that are quantitative, and we have a dependent variable that has two or more categories. And then we have logistic regression, which is either categorical and quantitative. They can be a mixture of both. And we have the dependent variable that is going to have two categories to it. So those are the ideas that we look at in the first part of multivariate analysis. And the last one is the idea of structure. What kind of structure does our data have? And what factors do the data group around? and this is one of the ways that you show the validity of a test or a questionnaire that you've put together. The principal component is doing the same thing as factor analysis, but it's doing it reverse. Here we have a lot of independent variables, and we're trying to reduce the number of those so we can see how they group together so that we can come up with more categorical independent variables rather than the independent ones. So those are the aspects of multivariate analysis that we'll be looking into our study in the coming days. Now, one of the most helpful ideas that you can find is on page 22 and 23 of your textbook, because here we have a decision tree that can help you understand how these go together, when they're categorical, when they're quantitative, when there's more than one, and all of that. But two very important pages for you to work through as you look at the aspects of multivariate statistics.